Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be ranking what I think are the top 10 defensive defensemen in the entire NHL. I am just isolating the defensive side of their game. This is not whoever puts up a lot of points but is also very good defensively. I am going to just look at them on the defensive end. And when it comes to this kind of list, it's going to be kind of tough because all of these guys' regular and advanced stats, they're in like the top 5%, top 3%, top 2%. So I'm not going to be like whipping out like Jay Fresh cards saying, oh, he's in the 99 percentile, but he's only in the 97 percentile. I think that kind of goes out the window when you're talking about, again, the best of the best. So I'm not going to use purely eye test for this, but I'm going to kind of just talk about the player as the whole, what their impact on their team is. So without further ado, let's get into it. In number 10, I have Jake Wallman. Jake Wallman, I could see why people might have a little bit of problem with this pick because he did just burst on the scene going from St. Louis to Detroit, but he was so effective in Detroit, and he is kind of a younger guy. He's only 26 years old, and with these kind of defensive defensemen, some of the offensive defensemen, they really pop immediately in the NHL, score like 50 goals at age 22, 23, but these defensive defensemen do take time to develop. So I think this is kind of what happened with Jake Wallman. His development was kind of stalled and took some time in St. Louis because they had Torrey Krug, Pietrangelo, Falk, Vince Dunn for a while, Parayko. Like, they were set on the defensive end, so they kind of overlooked Jake Wallman. But once he got to the Red Wings, he was really fantastic, especially this year. Looking at a guy like Moritz Seider, he was not playing good hockey to start the year. He gets paired with Jake Wallman. He goes from like a 45% expected goals defender to like 55. And Jake Wallman when he was on his own, even with, I think, like Oli Mata, was very good in his own right. I think he's so defensively sound, such a smart player, and really was able to put that on full display that going forward, I think he's going to be regarded with these other guys as the top defenseman, as one of the top defensemen in the entire league going forward. Number 9, Mattias Ekholm. Bit of a little bit of a weird one because in his prime years, like Nashville from 2015 to 2019, he was amazing defensively. He was one of, probably not the best, but one of the best defensive defensemen in the entire league. Then Nashville starts to kind of fall off, and his defensive numbers don't fall off a cliff, but they go from like great to just like very good to good, in part because the system as a whole started to regress. But once he got to Edmonton, and even this year as a whole, when he was on Nashville, he was back to being fantastic both ways, especially defensively. And once he got to Edmonton, obviously their defensive core massively improved. They went like 14-2-1 with him in the final 15 games, and even in the playoffs, yes, they lost in the second round, but they gave the eventual Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights, their toughest series by far. I think Ekholm next year is going to again be in the top 5% defensively and just an overall stud. Number 8, Ryan Lindgren, maybe the most underrated defenseman. One of the most underrated defensemen in the entire league, definitely, because he does play with Adam Fox, and Adam Fox definitely helps him out. But the reason why that pair works so well, especially defensively, is because Ryan Lindgren is such a force out there for the New York Rangers and can help Fox go up. Fox can go up on the offensive play because he knows he has such a reliable partner with like Ryan Lindgren behind him. Just an overall stud, very underrated. Number 7. This isn't meant to be kind of like a New Jersey, New York thing, but I do think Jonas Siegenthaler is the better defensive player. He was very underrated in his time in the Washington Capitals. Even on a bad Devils team, 2021, 2022, he was fantastic defensively. And then this year, him and Dougie Hamilton were one of the best pairs in the entire NHL. He's so defensively sound, doesn't take any penalties for the most part, kills penalties for the New Jersey Devils. He is the most underrated player on the Devils, without a doubt. You're going to find out that I'm going to say underrated a lot in this video because defensemen in general especially defensive defensemen, are the most underrated players in the league. And going forward, they have him signed like 3 more years at $3.3 million. It's absolutely criminal, but he's great. Number 6, Jonas Brodin. He did have a bit of a dip defensively. In previous years, he was like 98, 99 even strength defensively. This year, he was only like 92%. Still awesome, still fantastic. The reason why that the Minnesota defensive core is so good. He doesn't offer a ton offensively, but again, this is looking just at the defensive marks. And over the past 5 to 6 years, you can make an argument, besides the guys that I have like 1 or 2, that he's been the most consistent guy over the past decade defensively. Number 5, Devon Toews, this is a little bit of a weird one because he is very good offensively as well, but he is a defensive anchor on that Cale Makar pair. I know he plays with Cale Makar, so they're both fantastic, and as a result, they post great defensive results. But even on my New York Islanders, he was fantastic defensively. He just wasn't getting a ton of ice time, and the Islanders play a pretty boring style of offense that he wasn't putting up a lot of offensive totals. But even on the New York Islanders, he was elite defensively. He maybe wasn't as elite defensively as a guy that I have at number 4 that was also in the New York Islanders, but we'll get to him. But Devon Toews is a stud, and I do think his defense is slightly better than his offense, and he's fantastic at both. Number 4, going Adam Pelech at number 4. He finally got the respect that he deserved like a year or two ago, but this dude has just been churning out amazing defensive results back and forth for multiple years. I can't speak highly enough of him. If Anders Lee wasn't the captain, I would maybe make him a captain in the New York Islanders, him or Brock Nelson. Great guy overall, and then in terms of defensively, such a smart and sound player defensively. Pelech, the most underrated defensive pairing in the entire league, and he's obviously the better half of that in my opinion. He was an all-star one year, which just goes to show what the Islanders do offensively, but overall, stud. Mackenzie Weegar, number 3, Mackenzie Weegar. He didn't have the success that he had in Florida last year, so he is kind of underrated, but his defensive numbers were just as good on Calgary this year. Again, in the top 1%, absolutely locked down. And Calgary on a whole was very good defensively. They did have their shortcomings, goaltending and forward core, but this defense core is still fantastic, and Mackenzie Weegar is a massive reason why. He's not going to be putting up like 50, 55-point pace again on the Florida Panthers, but when looking at him just defensively, I think he needs to be in your top 5 based on what he's done in the past 3 years. Number two, if you watched my defenseman by categories, you know this might be a little bit controversial. But number 2, I got Jacob Slavin, number 2. He's great. He is fantastic. He is, in terms of compared to the guy at number 1 that I'm going to show at number 1 after this, he is the better overall defenseman. Defensively, he is still absolutely fantastic the past 2 years. He's been in the top 5%. He's been not as consistent as the guy that I have at number 1 that every single year posts like the best defensive results in the entire league. He's just very underrated. We'll get to him eventually. But Jacob Slavin obviously leads the best defense core in the entire league. They're like top 3 in goals against every year, top 3 in penalty kill. He's another stud, unsung hero of that team. This year, the first 2 rounds, I was saying this guy should get Conn Smythe hype because he had 5 points in 11 games as well as a 65% expected goals percentage. He can turn the most offensive defenseman in the entire league, Tony DeAngelo, into a solid overall player because he played with Slavin. That just goes to the greatness of Jacob Slavin. I think he's starting to get the respect that he deserves, but still top 15 defenseman for sure, maybe even top 10. But at number 1, I actually go with Chris Tanev. I go with Chris Tanev personally. I know this might be controversial, but I do think Chris Tanev is the best purely defensive defenseman in the entire league. I know people are going to go with Slavin, and Slavin does have a little bit of a bigger role and arguably on a better defensive team, but I think Rod Brindamore's system does lend Slavin's numbers to be not a little bit better, but he just plays in such a better system versus Chris Tanev. We saw him in Vancouver. He was still posting great defensive results with rookie Quinn Hughes as his partner, and just overall, every single year for the past decade, for the most part, he has been in either the 99th percentile or 100% percentile in even strength defense, penalty killing in the entire league. I just look at that consistency. Yes, he might fall off maybe next year, but he hasn't. He's 34 years old. He's still fantastic. He's going to give you 21 minutes a night of fantastic defensive play. So overall, I go Tanev, Slavin, Weegar, Pelech, Brodin, Toews, Siegenthaler, Lindgren, Ekholm, Wallman. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I think it's a pretty fair list. I know people are going to get mad about Slavin. Again, he is fantastic. He is a better overall defenseman than Chris Tanev. Chris Tanev offers nothing on the offensive end. I'm not trying to argue that. I just think when you look at them defensive and especially the resumes that they've built over the past year, I would rather have Slavin in a game because he does offer some offense. He's posted 45 points pace in a season before. Tanev's consistently been 15 to 20 points, but amazing defensively. Absolutely amazing defensively. So I personally go with Chris Tanev. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? I'm sure I'm going to get shit on for that. But thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Show tomorrow. Love you.